Last night we had a great time down in Washburn. This same crowd, minus one, was down there last night. Sponsored by Northrup Books, Schwamigan Review, Poetry Harbor, and the Arrowhead Regional Arts Council, where we had a reception and readings from and around Days of Obsidian, Days of Grace, a great new anthology put out by the love of many of you folks here in this area. It's real exciting. We have, instead of 2, 3 of the artists from that collection with us today, so it's once more a real treat to be part of this. If you haven't yet read some of the excerpts of the book, there is no surer proof of the flourishing of Native American writing than the appearance of this anthology featuring the work of 4 indisputably gifted writers, highly recommended by the Library Journal. Each poet creates images that reflect our own histories and fill our minds with memories of childhood and family, sometimes painful, sometimes beautiful. Days of Obsidian, Days of Grace is definitely worth reading. One of the native newspapers over in Wisconsin, where it's still 3:45 over there. We're going to do a poetry slam today. But before we do that, we've got to get out of our attitude and into our mood. And so I'm going to read a piece by Dave Hopkins about our first presenter who's not in the anthology. David says about his new album, Closing the Circle, ethereal harmonies of wind, water, fire, birds, and frogs are woven together by Anaquad's music on his soaring new album. A powerful reverence for the earth and a prayerful surrounding, closing the circle. Hearing this living and breathing work of music has been an experience I am still digesting. So to get us in that proper mood, before we hear the great artwork, Frank Montano.
I'm still digesting my dinner, so. I thought about that. We had a big discussion downstairs when we were eating dinner, because I don't know how to eat a pita, because I never eat those things. I had to use a fork and cut it up. I said I'm part Mexican, and it made me want to roll it up and eat it like a tortilla. I don't know. How do you eat a pita? Does anybody know? Yes, is that Greek? Is anybody Greek in the group here? How do you eat that pita?
Go for it.
It is go for it. The name of this anthology that's out is what's going to be in my first flute piece here. So if you listen close, you might be able to hear that in there. Just think about what that means, Days of Obsidian. I don't know what it means. And maybe one of the poets can explain that when they come up here, but I do know, I knew a couple of girls named Grace, so I know that part of it. Okay, so this is going to be what my thoughts are at this time.
the next thing I'm going to do I've never done before. So I don't know how to do it. The junior elder from Fond du Lac, weighing in at 197 pounds, Jim Northrup Jr. Let's welcome Jim. The junior princess pre-elder from White Earth, Minnesota via Oneida, weighing in at 97 pounds, Denise Sweet. And the aging hippie, illegal alien from Canada via San Francisco and Washburn, Al Hunter. Come on up. We've asked them to sort it out amongst themselves, the first few pieces from the book or otherwise, to relate to each other if they can in this first phase, and after they do a few pieces together to give some contrast and consistency at the same time in some of their work as artists. I'm going to ask the two gentlemen to kind of fade. Jim knows that. He's a stage writer now. Fade, and Denise has a few solo pieces we'd like to hear from her before she leaves. Then we'll have a break, and then we'll bring these other gentlemen back. So I'm going to turn this over to Al.
You lost the toss.
Those guys must be from Redcliffe. Look how low this mic is. Man, they're short, man. They all short in Redcliffe, Walt? Also, this is the first time I've seen anybody wear... How many T-shirts you got on, Walt? This guy's he's wearing 3 T-shirts. Not just 1, not 2, but 3. Did you see that? He's wearing 2. He's a wild guy, man. Yeah. He's thinking ahead, yeah. Is that kind of like you're getting ready for November? I've heard of owning, I wonder if that's in keeping with your owning 12 pairs of underwear. January, February, March. I don't know what I'm doing. I guess. I think what I'd like to do is I'll read a piece and maybe ask Jim and Denise to read one of their poems that either has some of the same subject matter, theme, or something in it. I don't know if that's too... Does that sound? Okay. Okay. All right. The other night, last night in Washburn, rather, we sort of had a theme around Richard Nixon. We're not going to do that today, though. We're not going to do that. It was a nightmare. Yeah, I had a dream about Richard Nixon the other night at Dave Hanlon's house. And I was not the first one to have a dream about Richard Nixon at Dave Hanlon and Loretta Perry's house. There's another gentleman here who also had a dream about Richard Nixon at Hanlon's and Loretta's house. And right now, you'll probably be hearing about it soon. It's going to be turned into a shrine. People will be making long pilgrimages to Dave Hanlon's house because there was not only one dream about Richard Nixon there was 2. I'm going to start off with a piece called Mishomis. which means grandfather. We use the same word for the sun. We use the same word for stones. We use the same word for our grandfather, Mishomis. I don't want to live without the memory of you. I don't want the dream of tracing the outline of your feet to end before I die. I dream of your songs. I dream of you singing. I dream of the way your voice sounded. I dream of the way you told the stories of each song in the fading light of evening, where they came from, who dreamed them, who taught them to you when you were young. I haven't forgotten what you said. When you go in to sing, you sing at least 4 songs, eh? When you're going to sing, you go through that song at least 4 times, eh? At least 4 times. Don't take no medicine when you sing, eh? Once you take that medicine to help you sing, you have to take it all the time after, eh? You take it. You have to take it all the time, eh? I haven't forgotten what you said. I have only taken the medicine of your memory, of your memory, of your memory, of your memory.
Dancing the Rice. The fall season enters the rhythms of our pace. Leaves gather like whorls on a spindle of wind, twisting and coiling around our feet. The old man sits in front of the fire, stirring and singing low in whispers to himself, tossing the rice slowly in the bottom of the black pot. The good grain, monomen, turns slowly from green to darkened fibers in the heat. We watch it turn, small swirls of steam wisp away from the parching. The helper, a young man, slowly slips into the moccasins, recall that they belonged to his grandmother and once were too small for his feet, but they grew with him. When we dance, he says, we caress the earth. We carry power in the way we present ourselves as dancers, as singers, bringing the rice home. This power enters each stem of the monomen, but it must be a gentle step, the patting of feet against the good grain. They hold our dreams, and we must be slow and gentle when we dance the rice, or they can quickly turn to broken stems and then to dust. Then we have nothing, and the monomen will not return. He lowers himself into the barrel of the parched rice, placing his feet gently against the heated grain, slowly lifting one foot and twisting the other. He shifts his hips side to side, hoisting his weight on the sides of the barrel. He gently kneads the grain, pressing each step in a circle against the barrel's bottom. Everything goes in a circle, everything in nature. You and me, The old man watches while the rice is tossed from the basket into the air. Tiny whirlwinds of chaff spring forth like dervishes released from a magic lamp. The wind sails them away from the winnowed rice. The grain chinks against the birch bark basket in cadence with the dropping of wrists and the young man's swaying black hair. It is a dance of sweet and gentle love, warming hearts and pleasing that old man who watches and sees in circles our survival embodied in the winds of October.
I have a poem that's related to what she just spoke about. It's not in the book, and that's Pat McKinnon's fault. It's called Manoomin. Tobacco swirled in the lake as we offered our thanks. Calm water welcomed us. Rice heads nodded in agreement. Ricing again, miigwech money do. Cedar caressed the heads. Ripe rice came along to join us in many meals this winter. The rice bearded up. We saw the wind move across the lake. An eagle, a couple of coots. The sun smiled everywhere. Relatives came together, talk of other lakes, other seasons. Fingers stripping rice while laughing, gossiping, remembering. It's easy to feel a part of the generations that have raced here before. It felt good to get on the lake. It felt better getting off, carrying a canoe load of food and centuries of memories.
Water. Water is the blood of the earth. Water sustains all life. It is said that the amount of water that covers the earth's surface directly correlates to the amount of water that makes up the human body. We are the same. The earth is mostly water. We are mostly water. Water is the blood of the earth. Water sustains all life. It is said that women are the keepers of water. The earth is a woman. We call her our mother. The respect we show women directly correlates to the respect we show the earth. The earth is a woman. The earth is our mother. The two are the same. Water is the blood of the earth. Water sustains all life. Because these directly correlate, we need to consider what has happened within these contexts and what continues to happen all over this island we call our mother. They are one and the same. When we do this and look at how women are treated today and how they have been treated, particularly in the last 500 years, we see the direct correlation between these two dynamics. They are one and the same. In order to be a part of the earth's healing, we first must consider how we, as human beings, as men, as peoples, as societies, contribute to what has happened to the earth, a woman. The two are one and the same. Water is the blood of the earth. Water sustains all life. When plants are born, when trees are born, when flowers are born, they emerge from the womb of our mother, the earth. They become medicine. Nourished by water, the lifeblood of the earth, they emerge. When children are born, when little girls are born, when little boys are born, they emerge from the womb of the mother on a small river of water and blood and placenta. They become medicine. The two are one and the same. The treatment we show women, the treatment we show children, directly correlates to how we treat the earth, to how we treat the plants, the trees, the flowers, to how we treat our medicine. The two are one and the same. Water is the blood of the earth. Water sustains all life. We need to pause and consider these things and directly correlate them to our own lives, directly correlate them to our own healing, directly correlate them to the healing of our families, directly correlate them to the healing of our communities, directly correlate them to the healing of our nations, directly correlate them to the healing we need to sustain within ourselves. We are medicine. Our children are medicine. Water is medicine. The trees are medicine. The earth is medicine. The earth is water. We are water. Water is the blood of the earth. Water sustains all life. Good.
Water poem. The small wood turtle staggers slowly, rocking to lift herself from the river. Steadied, she can still feel the pull of the moon's blue rings. It's not a simple act, resisting a river both beautiful and dangerous, a river that pulls us in with a logic of its own. Today I stood remembering this metaphor of persuasion at the convergence of the Wisconsin and the Eau Claire. I imagined the struggle, how the body and the hardness of reason would ride out the blurry rebellion, toppling like twin birds within a cage of bone. Then while fishing, I waded through weeds to retrieve Saxon's tangled line, branches lost to the thwack and swirl of persuasive currents, float by like broken bodies of shipwrecked suitors. I stand for a moment to regain balance while small perch whirl around my thighs like raw silk, and for that moment any fear of dark water is forgotten. The patternless weave and resistance of this watery landscape conspires a romance with drowning. But to stand or even swim seems the secret of balance between feverish shifts of twilight that pull us in and the rise of dark currents that hold us in. We are at once disconnected and tethered to this great gray mystery, while smooth stones dream of wings, beaks and gills gasp for air.
Trying to think of a common theme. Closest I could come up to was long poems. So I found one of my longest poems, but it needs a little bit of an explanation. First, I have a prop that goes with it. And also a note about the language. It contains the F word. Now, ordinarily, I would stay true to what I wrote, but there are some young ears in here, and I don't want them to think that this is cable television. So, instead of saying the word, I will hum it. Hold up on that patrol, we got a chopper coming in. Good, no reason to stand, so we all sat down. The slapping sound of the rotor blades told us a landing was near. 2 gunships went over, suspicious, looking for danger to the chopper they were escorting. It landed, they walked in our direction. Starched jungle utilities, spit-shine boots, shiny rank insignia told us these were rear echelon Marines. They surrounded a large green-clad man. "It's John Wayne," one grunt said. The Duke centered himself in the circle of men, smiling, posing for pictures and signing autographs. He was enjoying himself until the Indian patrol leader invited him for a walk with the grunts. The Duke patted his ample belly and said, "I'll leave that to you professionals." John Wayne, who killed Indians by the dozens with his movie six-shooter, refused. The ranking officers looked at the disrespectful Marines. Court-martials and other punishments filtered through the rear echelon brains. The grunts looked back with, "What you gonna do, cut my hair and send me to Vietnam? I'm already here, maybe for the rest of my life." The Duke looked troubled when he saw the killing etched in the eyes of the grunts. More killing than he'd seen in a quarter century of movie killing. He gave some excuse about lung cancer and was excused from the rest of the war. Derisive laughter lifted the chopper away from the young grunts. What a pussy, wouldn't even go on a little walk with us.
The executive director says one more. Okay. Time's up? Okay. I was going to read a short one. Jim kind of made me nervous, so I'm just going to read a short poem. It's called Shaman in Black Robe. The catechism of guilt fails to blend well with rituals of faith and forgiveness. I came up through layers as sap and water windstorms and rain, now shifting between the power of shamans and the cold hand of the cross.
So it was a good experiment, right? Worked well. We're going to ask Jim to exit stage left and Al, and let's give them a hand.
There you are.
Thank you.
Here, let's back you up so you can actually read into the microphone for once.
Patrick. Can I have a glass of water? Yeah. Great. Before I start, I would like to say miigwech to Walter for the really fine introduction you'd given me last night. He's usually either embarrassing me or teasing me or insulting me, so last night I felt really honored for a change. And of course, it's always a treat to hear Jim and Alan sort of banter back and forth. I met those guys during the whole sort of peace and solidarity movement that was going on in the late 80s in the state of Wisconsin, and we got together a couple of different times, both here and in Wisconsin, having to do with sort of providing support and solidarity for those, for the Spears and the people who were advocates of the treaty rights, the sovereign issues of Anishinaabe.
From the Mandarin.
Thank you. So I'm going to begin with a couple of new pieces. I'm going to read from Days of Obsidian, Days of Grace. Oh, Patrick, I wanted to tell you that someone called me a couple of days ago and loved the title, Days of Insidious, Days of Grace. So, already we're, yeah. So it's getting its reviews, and it's getting its, I think it's being received by both Native people, tribal people from other parts of the country, and readers of Native Lit are taking a look at this collection and saying, what? What is the coordinate here? How did I find myself in the likes of Jim Northrup, Al Hunter, and Adrian Lewis? Well, I'm pleased to be running with that kind of pack, and I look forward to many, many readings promoting the book. I'm going to read this poem for Dee Bainbridge. She was and she continues to be a real important educator in the state of Wisconsin and for Anishinaabe people. She's a storyteller, and she told me a lot of good things, and a lot of important stories have been told by that lady for, I would say, ultimately thousands of children have heard her good words. And in 1985, I embarked on a project on learning more about our stories, and she taught me a lot. And she came to my poetry reading last night, and I was very pleased to see her there, and still am looking to see her smile when I've done something right and I've remembered something right. This poem is entitled Song for Discharming. One of the important parts of oral tradition is the affirming quality that we have as human beings to be able to sort of talk our way into healing and talk our way into feeling good and recovery. Recovery, so much a part of being recovered is to be able to talk, to express our experience, to be articulate about the good things and the bad things, and all of those things put together comprise our experience. And the Ojibwe knew that. And they knew that empowering yourself meant singing your own songs and to sing yourself well. And I wrote this poem, which is a song really, entitled Song for Discharming, which is actually a series of songs that the Anishinaabe had for healing yourself, to kind of let go of the bad things. Maybe you were involved in a relationship that no longer was charming, no longer was a good thing for you. And so a song for discharming releases you from the power of that relationship. Chippewa Charming Song is sort of the epigram. Hear the voice of my song. It is my voice. I speak to your naked heart. Hear the voice of my song. It is my voice. I speak to your naked heart. Song for discharming. Before this, I would not do or say what impulse rushes in to say or do. What instinct burns within, I had learned to temper in my clever sick. While stars unlock at dawn, anonymous as the speed of light, my gray mornings began as nothing, freed of geography and stripped of any source or consequence. I was, as you may expect, a human parenthesis. There is no simple way to say this, but drift closer, invisible one. Swim within this stream of catastrophic history, yours, mine, no, you decide, and then come here one more time so that I may numb like dark and desperate, so that I may speak your name this final round. You might think an infinite black fog waits to envelop me. You might dream an endless flat of light. You might think I drink at the very edge of you, cowering like passerine while hawks hunt the open field of my tiny wars. But little by little, like centipedes that whirl and spin and sink into the scorching sands of Sonora, or like gulls at Moniwinakaning that rise and stir and vanish into the heat lightning of August, I will call you down and bring you into that deathly coil. I will show you each step and stare. I will do nothing, and yet it will come to you in this way. That sorcery that swallowed me will swallow you too, at your desired stanza and in a manner of your own making. While I shake the rattle of ferocity moments before sunrise, while I burn sage and sweetgrass and you, my darling, while I burn you like some ruined fetish and sing over you over and over like some almighty voice from the skies, it is in that fragile light that I will love you. It is in that awakening I will love myself too. In this dry white drought about to end, in this ghostly city of remember, you will know this too, and never be able to say. A couple of weeks ago, I was spending the day with children at Milwaukee Indian Community School. I had completed a residency there and working with them in writing poetry. And as we sort of get involved in our writing and in our work as teachers, we kind of forget for a moment where they're at. And I was getting into this sort of esoteric discussion about the heartbeat and how, as Donald Hall once described it, as being sort of the psychic origin for poetry, that love affair that we have with rhythm and cadence and the impulse that we heard, or the pulse actually, that we heard again and again, our mother's heartbeat. I was talking to them about that. And I said, what is the first sound that you hear? And a young person from the corner of the room who had sort of been disruptive during the whole session said, a gunshot. And I really didn't want to pay any attention to that. I thought, oh, he's just toying with me. He's trying to get my attention. He's trying to disrupt, and I don't want to give him that power at this time. But when I went home, as I drove home from Milwaukee, I kept thinking about that and thinking, what I wanted him to say and what I wanted the children to hear was this idea of the heartbeat and how it's such a powerful force, even in our memory. We can't help but fall in love with something that's rhythmic and predictable and reliable. And they don't have that in their lives in Milwaukee. They don't hear those kinds of things. What they hear is shouting and noise and gunshots. A found poem, or Sometimes I Hate My Job. What is the first sound you hear? Reply from the corner, a gunshot. 8th grade giggle, ho. Walter uses knife, Hunkpapa Sioux, he's ignored, later written up, later suspended. The guest author makes a point. The daily heart at 100,000 beats, alpha waves, 10 times that, the earth being water, 90%, waves constant, lunar phases, wind patterns, day by day, hip-hop, tick-tock, all of it. Homeroom teacher calls me that. Guest author. The answer is heartbeat. Arterial sounds in utero, prenatal lullaby. Poet in the school, I make my point. He makes his. The next piece I'd like to read is again from stories that were told to me, and really what I try to do when I write poetry or really kind of reclaim my own oral history is to sort of capture where I was at the time the story was being told to me and what I was thinking about and its impact rather than the story itself. Because I believe, and I think a lot of people understand, that the stories are more powerful if they're kept in oral form. In 1989, 1990, I began moving towards Green Bay and meeting with women there who were midwives for the Oneida community. And the poem I'm going to read to you is a result of a conversation with one of the midwives, Tony House. And it has to do with the occurrence of a stillbirth during a home delivery. 2 words is the title, Stillborn. Pearl white, we bathed you, cocooned in soft flannel folds, and delivered you like an effigy to the nurse. Her head shook once as she touched your chest, your starfish hands, your tiny head elongated and wet with anguish. The coolant in the room begins to hiss. You would have shivered and cried for home. There, a bassinet gauzed in ivory lace and a rocking chair wait, heaping with gifts. One, a t-shirt that reads, spoiled rotten. But what did it feel like? The burden of mottled birth onto cold, wet sheets. Ghost-like and timid, what did you feel? The paralysis of silence, cold steel against your spine. Your body caging a tiny murmur of warmth, a stubborn secret. As the spasms boil within an amniotic river, a gray-green meconium swaddles you, your tiny neck, swollen and collared, drops the weight gladly into gloved hands. Reluctance is your only grace, your birth in empty, still relief. Your sparrow heart collapsed into dark ponds of blood. Lovely Pearl, did you feel her legs quiver around you? Their hands struggle to resurrect you? Did you hear the sputter of the aspirator or the sharp ping of the surgical knife as it hit the floor? Would you have carried us? Let us reconcile the seconds of your life into years just once. We would press these lips across your chest till the heart tones leapt across the screen like silvery sprites. Instead, a harsh, blank, lunatic silence levels the walls around us. See your mother now, her breast bound and swollen, weeping with the bluish dew of new milk, her body emptied of its manifest, mourning heavy with beginnings. We attend a deeper birthing now. We attend a deeper birthing now. The next piece I'd like to read is a poem that I've enjoyed time and again. And I was thinking about it as Al was reading his water poem. I think in both, was it in 92 we were in Oklahoma? We'd gotten a chance to meet the author of this poem, Nia Francisco. And I've always admired her work, and this particular piece is one that I like to discuss with the young people who are going through some hard times right now and really need to understand the impact and the importance of birth and the importance of shared responsibility of birth. Men tell and talk. Men tell and talk about their pride, being so proud of being a father, of so many children born to them and the joyride. Men do not know birth and its pain, but I assume those who know the drum tightness do know. They sing reverently, holding the drum gently, and the liquid in the drum vibrates with good ancient songs. A woman moans. The tightness of her drum contains unborn life, and it moves ticklishly, touching the touching of the baby inside her drum. At the coming of early morning, the baby moves. At the coming of early morning, hunger teases the unborn life, and the mother laughs. Today, many young men deny their birth. They cast their children upon each other, and it is they who do not know the tightness of the drum, the liquid, or the woman's pregnancy. In many of our penal institutions, there are native people, both women and men, spending a good deal of time contemplating their mistakes behind prison walls. And the next piece I'd like to read is for those people. I have people in mind in particular, but most notably Leonard Peltier. Doing time. Like Itomi, orphaned and alone, you wander the indifferent darkness within the minimum security prison. Sleepless, your nights become a narrow ache of nightmares you seldom confess. 5 years ago, the accident, the terrible rolling and rolling, the bodies pushed so far from the front seat they are lifted one by one from the trunk of that car like white rabbits of hideous magic, their fur dull with terror, horror in their pale pink eyes. And how your own brown skin unraveled in intensive care, and right before you, regret seized its claws in you like a hawk and clung to you and shook your helpless weight like some bizarre rag doll or some diamondback, dusty and warm. You just want to be left alone, and you pray this hard till even your wounds, raw and open, glisten with tears. But I heard it too, the hollowing sound of the immutable, the grieving song you would lift to your lips each day, and at night try to drink away the sights of the bodies, weightless and ragged, reckless in their flight, like Jesus in the sky. They tilt and loom and spiral towards you. Now let comfort fold around you in the houses of cedar and pine, those dreams of continuance where even in darkness I do not travel, in the house in which you live, where the door is thick and heavy, and I could never kick it down. I'm going to lighten up a little bit and read some poems that a couple of them are included in the anthology, and one I've just recently written. This is a poem that I guess it's sort of reflecting back on my Catholic school upbringing as well as my own high school sort of bitterness towards my teachers, and having to sort of force myself to like home economics or some of the more conventional areas of study for young women, when all along I had thought that biology was a pretty neat thing, and that I belonged in the science classes rather than behind a sewing machine. So I wrote this poem sort of directed to the whole school system, and I hope you enjoy it. It's entitled The Origin of Envy. And now I am 15 and not allowed to be. Knock-kneed and hair-stiff, I had no reason to sit up straight. In 8th hour, nothing fits, and I am beyond reasonable most of the time. I hate my stepfather. For no good reason, while the nice girls confiscate class rings and wear their diaphragms most of the time, I wear sunglasses, straddle the toilet to reach the exhaust fan, smoke cigarettes to the bone. I make myself sick, wanting to be like them and then not, making no attempt to conceal my contempt for the cheerleaders of stupid happiness senior high. The only time I felt anything made a difference came at 16, no 18, when among the faint girls and football morons, the crowd parted like the Red Sea, and I stepped forward to the burners of Bunsen, the patron saint of Mr. Harris's 7th-hour biology lab. I stood before the petri dishes and carefully rode X-Acto knives, so utterly fascinated with the colony of fruit flies emerging from bananas, brown and rotting, with the horse fetus floating like a grotesque pickle in a cloudy brine of formaldehyde. Then Mr. Harris, the little ferret biology teacher, said I was a show-off, an eager first volunteer to dissect the large black bass, to splay and scoop the long pearl-like strands from the rubbery cavity of flesh. Harris and his egg-white smile saying to me, "Do you have the stomach for this?" I can't believe I'm my age and I still want to carve my name into wooden banisters, to skip class to smoke, and that I still desire to take that knife into my hand and, in a dainty manner, sink it deep below the layer of sinewy back muscles, beyond the tiny bladder and brackish yellow liver, to the iridescent pearls, with an expert hand so swift and steady no one would have the nerve to question. Do I sound like I'm still bitter? Yes. Okay. There is a poem in the anthology that was written to sort of complement the theme of a Women's Studies Conference that was held at UW Green Bay in, I think it was 1992. And the theme of the conference, some of you heard me talk about a little bit about this last night, was having to do, the Women's Studies conference had a theme of women's particular way of looking at the world. And it was extended to all aspects, all facets of the conference ad nauseum, until finally, you know, they were discussing at the Wine and Cheese women's way of eating, women's ways of drinking, women's ways of socializing, women's ways of on and on. And I thought it a bit ridiculous, but certainly worthy of poetic note. And so I wrote the following poem entitled Zen and Women's Way of Parking. We know sooner than we think when the vehicle we are driving refuses to be herded into its stall. We crank the wheel and ease our way around and in and back and forth, and then back out and forward and in again, and then back and forth, until we have neatly and carefully negotiated a small thing, a big thing, into a small space. It's all in the wrist when we speak of power steering, or for that matter, our lover. And yet, it is a maneuver that requires integration of our body, mind, and spirit. The contortive efforts of the driver imitate hatha yoga positionings, as we are expected to see front and behind, this side and that side, front and behind, all at the same time. Be in the here and now in the parking lot. Serenity is not far behind, neither is the Volvo parked in the next lane. And how quickly we computate space, density, width, length, and probability. At that moment, we grind the gears from first to reverse and back again. After careful deliberation, the geniuses that we arrive at the parking nudge principle. Simply put, it is necessary and a tender act to nudge the vehicle to the front and back of us as we locate the parameters of the space we are to become. Oh, to be parked in a stall of our own, but spiritually connected with all that exists around us. Nirvana is achieved, and the headlights are on. Let them call us lady drivers. Let them curse and shake their fists at the battle axe behind the wheel. We'll give them no fast break, no free ride. Indeed, we will not yield, even though the sign insists. Oh, sisters, this is the right-of-way revolution. A woman's way of parking is knowing and seeing and feeling our way around this hard, flat landscape we come to call parking space. We have finally come to a place of which we surely belong. We are at last in the driver's seat, and we laugh in the face of cruise control. Thank you. I wanted to read a piece, too, that had a little bit about, again, that theme of both water and women in it. And I don't know if, I don't know, that's the theme that's working through this piece, for me anyhow. It's the first one in the section, if you're following along in the hymnal. I have an experience that I'd like to just share with you just briefly. I had been working at UW Eau Claire and had come to know a young woman who is a Winnebago, and she is a very beautiful young lady, and I really could see so much talent and so much potential there, but she was really struggling, you know, first coming to college and trying to keep up with things and being in an environment that is essentially hostile to Native students at that time anyhow. And she was also struggling with an eating disorder, and she was anorexic, and it was the first time that I had really seen that disease in a Native woman. And I really felt angry with her, quite frankly. I was seeing her just sort of dwindle away before my eyes, and I began writing this poem at that time and wanting to really kind of somehow or another release myself from the sense of just frustration and I guess responsibility in some way that I was watching this and not being able to do anything about it. And so, you know, after a period of time, you know, she got back on track, and I was grateful to see that she'd made her way through college very well. But you know, several years later, I'm proud to say that I'm in recovery now too, recovery from an eating disorder. I read this poem for our women here, our tribal women here, as some old friends and some new acquaintances, really. But to understand that in reading this poem, I read it for all women, and knowing that none of us are really immune or safe from the kinds of diseases of fear and despair or anger or, you know, grief that we haven't dealt with. Prayer for women filled with grace. Women who go hungry drink delicately their tears, tipping hands like lacy teacups to their mouths, whisper all gone to themselves and to their orphan bodies. Women going hungry are eating themselves, not like grandmother spider, drawing a web from her body, spinning threads of glass into death's timid puzzle, but like a wolf gnawing to free herself from steel jaws. Women who go hungry are like wolves, hiding for days in their clothing, a burrow to warm their ivory bodies, lifting themselves in sacrifice in a cult of suffering. To those women going hungry, whose porcelain faces are feverish with blame, whose voices mimic the clear, thin weeping of August rain, draw up like buckets from hollow wells, draw up like tin cups between prison bars. The rich ooze of anger will twirl around the tongue while the eyes grow filmy with pleasure. It is in this ritual of indulgence that spoons and spills from within, the only appetite left to survive this perfect hunger spell. I'm going to read a longer piece. This is a poem I like to read at certain times of the year. It's a longer poem because I had so many, I had to cover the entire hemisphere. So I wanted to address that in this poem because I had been asked by the students at Green Bay to do a poem particularly for Columbus Day, but for the harvest season for them at a observance that they were conducting at the university. So I felt both honored and kind of befuddled on what I could write about. But you know, the poem, for me anyhow, it's a poem that tries to address some of the things that I admire most about tribal people, about Indian people, about indigenous people of this hemisphere, and it's how we just don't go away. We just keep hanging in there. And no matter what befalls us, we're just, you know, you can't get rid of us. And you know, it reminds me of the statement that was made by Oren Lyons some years back. He says, land is always the issue. We have it and they want it. But that's beyond that. We will stay with the land, and as long as we remember that, we'll never disappear, because the land will always be here. I think about the folks who sort of embrace the Earth, the Mother Earth movement. And they talk about saving the Earth, saving our Mother Earth. And, I really don't think she needs us to save her, I think she's probably going to do, one of these days she's just going to cough us up and spit us out, and then she'll be fine. Like a bad clump of phlegm or something in her throats, She'll get rid of us, and then she'll be okay. Anyhow, this poem is for Walter in particular, an inspiration. Each time I see him, I'm just amazed. He never goes away either, He just hangs in there. This poem began 500 years ago. This morning, I traced the numbers of generations of our children, Mr. Columbus, the great-great-great-greats of offspring that discovered you on that Caribbean island you claimed for your European benefactors. They are here today. We are still here on that island and on other islands. We are still here in the deltas of the South, rebuilding our traditional shelters after the hurricanes. We are still here gathered around the Great Lakes giving thanks for the good grain, Monoman, and planning our harvest ceremonies while our grandmothers and grandfathers teach us the real old songs of gratitude and reverence. We are still here in the Black Hills and at Big Mountain and at James Bay, where big business and big government tries to rid itself of the nuisance of native people. We are here in solidarity at the fence lines in Hopi and Navajo land, and at the boat landings in Balsam Lake and in Solon Springs and in Lac du Flambeau. Indeed, we are even at the mouth of the Mississippi, where the drum carries a true Thanksgiving prayer for the land and the water that carries our healing medicines. We are here at Gunnesadage and at Akwesasne, where our spiritual leaders in their own language say no more to the harassment, to the removal, to the imprisonment, and to what they say in America, development, because they know what they know, and they are praying as hard as they can that you will come to know it as well. We are here. We are still here on clouded land in White Earth, where Anishinaabe, a king, and women warriors like Winona LaDuke say, 500 years of taking is long enough, say. We can return to the last of our original lands, say. The United States government has failed to uphold the spirit and the letter of the law of the land according to the treaties. We are going to recover these stolen lands acre by acre, inch by inch, even if we have to buy them back. That is what she said, and that is what I say. We are here. We are still here beyond any border that might be construed between our sisters and brothers of South and Central America, where the children of Rigoberto Menchú teach one another how to read and write by taking sticks and tracing words in Guarani in the ground, so they do not forget to speak to their elders, so they do not forget that they too are Indian. I tell you this, Mr. Columbus, we are recreating the enemy's language, as the Creek poet says, into words of resistance, into words of affirmation, into words that help us fully understand that the stronghold of colonialism first exists in the mind. Somewhere in Guatemala, a child can still pray in a language born out of struggle and into survival. Somewhere in El Salvador, the people now whisper, "We are here. We are still here." And so to the generations of offspring born in 1492, I give you this, a poem that has taken some 500 years to write. It has taken some time to find the words, to trace their beginnings. It takes time to recall the stories. It takes time to remember and recover the strength and pride in our sovereignty, to say what we have to say, but believe this. Waiting is worth it, the old-timers tell us. Time is seamless, without a beginning or end. Mr. Columbus, today marks no greater discovery than our ability to survive, our ability to speak for ourselves, and our patience with those who followed you to this place and into our homes. What better way to celebrate a good day within another harvest season? We are here, we are still here, we are where we belong. Miigwech.
wrote a fact sheet once on what it meant to be Indian, and I got stuck with that word. Jim Northrup went the whole year stuck on that word, Indian. And so I went through all of the explanations about Indian and Indios and all of that, and I finally concluded that we're stuck with it. You know, there's really no getting around it. Everything else is either too cumbersome or you have to explain too much about it. You know, just as soon as people get used to Anishinaabe, you know, a damn Sioux walks in the room and you got to go through the whole process all over again. You know? So Indian, we're kind of stuck with. So I finally come up with the definition then for Indian, and it just is simply the opposite of cowboy. We're going to hear two more pieces from our lovely friend, Anishinaabe from Red Cliff, Frank Montano. And then we're going to bring Jim and Al up in our final duet set. Let's bring Frank back for a couple of more pieces.
I'm going to do a song here because someone last night asked me if I would do this, I guess, and they said that they think about this song a lot. It's a song that I wrote that the words came from probably from dreams that I had through my whole life, even when we moved into the cities. And to this day, I still have those dreams at different times. And it has to do with the eagle. And I had a dream about that eagle. I have a lot of dreams about him, but this one was in a cemetery. And was after a funeral of one of my relatives. And the people around the grave in that dream were staring at something on a stump, and it was this eagle. And I ran over to that place, and they had picked up stones and they were going to throw them at him, and I ran over there and I was in front of him telling him to fly away. And he bent over with his head and brushed my cheek, and I turned around and looked into his eyes, and I saw something there like a tunnel in his eyes. And I saw everything from the past, the beginning of time, and past the place that we live in. When I woke up from that dream, I talked with one of the elders I visit with, and he just looked at me and laughed about it. He said, "Don't you know?" And I said, "What?" And he says, "That's the way it is. It's the way they always explain things." He said, "That's just the way it is." I said, "What do you mean by that?" He said, "Well, you know, the eagle is a spirit, and he's one of the ones that the Creator put here to watch over us. And he flies in and out of this world and into the other world through time, and he sees things that way. There's no time where eagles fly." And with that and all the other dreams I had, I sat down one day and I wrote this song about this eagle, my spirit friend. I believe the eagle my spirit friend. At night I fly beside him in the sky. He comes for me and it takes me where I've never been. As we soar above, I watch the days go by. We can travel any place in this universe, and there's no such thing as time where eagles fly. So I visit with my grandfathers in their own time, and as daylight comes, I bid them all goodbye. On eagle's wings, I'm learning how to live. I'm finding out I have so much to give. So if you find you're back against the wall, just call my name. I'll try to catch you before you fall. I remember in one dream the rain was pouring down, and the earth was giving way beneath my feet. Then I heard my spirit friend up in the cloudy skies. Then I knew that soon I'd tell the earth goodbye. On eagle's wings, I'm learning how to live. I'm finding out I have so much to give. So if you find you're back against the wall, just call my name. I'll try to catch you before you fall. There are so many things that happen that lead me to believe that the eagle is a spirit friend to me. When I'm in trouble or feeling sorrows, I know that late at night, on eagle's wings, I will be free when I take flight. On eagle's wings, I'm learning how to live. I'm finding out I have so much to give. So if you find you're back against the wall, just call my name. I'll try to get you before you fall. Just call my name. I'll try to get you before you fall. Thank you. I want to do something a little different here today too, and this is kind of an experiment, so seeing as this is a day for experimenting, I want to ask if Dave Hopkins will come up here and help me out here, and maybe Al Hunter, if you can come up here and help me out. I'm going to talk about this a little bit, what this is. This is a song that I'm going to try to duplicate a little bit of that's on the tape called Closing the Circle. And this song is supposed to be a song about what I saw in a dream in the rainforests in South America. These people sitting in their homes there and not really realizing what's happening around them, these indigenous people. And this song is called Rainforest Visions. And of course, we may not sound exactly like what's on the tape, because on the tape I had the advantage of doing each instrument separately and mixing them together. But this is a song called Rainforest Visions. So just bear with us, we'll try to get it going here. Okay, I want you to get the rain stick going here and get this heartbeat done. Thank you.
We were going to do a duet, but Jim slipped me a 20, so he's going first. You know, you have to survive. This is a tough world here. Jim's a vet. He's a native vet, walking in two worlds. That's how you hear it. Well, he was right in between. You know, he was never in one side or the other. He was kind of walking down the woods all by himself there. So when he got in Vietnam, there was one particular horrible day, and he and two of his comrades were surrounded by the mysterious enemy closing in on them, and they knew they were going to maybe not see the end of that day. So they all turned to each other and said, "What shall we do?" So Jim said, "We should pray." "Does anybody know how?" And they all looked at each other and, "No, I never prayed." Well, Jim said, "I used to live next to a church, and I'd listen in every now and then. So I think I can pray." He said, "Everybody sit down quietly and bow your head. And then just say what I say. B15. N38. Jim Northrup.
If only Walter knew how many times I did pray at the bingo hall. I've been writing for a while, and I've learned some things about writing. One of the things I learned was how to scare any poet. Is that a poem, or did you just make that up? And then any writer, I suppose you could scare him by asking, "Yeah, well, what have you written lately?" This is what I wrote lately. Veterans Day is coming. It always reminds me of parades. When I was young, I used to go to parades in downtown Duluth. This was before television, so a parade was big doings. The music from the bands, the soldiers marching, and the flags fluttering all added to the excitement. Memorial Day, July 4th, Labor Day, and Veterans Day were all good reasons to have a parade. For me, one highlight of the parade is waiting for this real old man to come by. He was identified as the last surviving member of the Grand Army of the Republic. I think his name was Albert Wilson. He'd fought for the Union in the Civil War. When I saw him, he wasn't doing much of anything. I don't remember him waving to the crowd. All he was doing was riding and smiling. I waved at him, though. I knew I was looking at a piece of living American history. This man was alive when Abe Lincoln was president. He'd fought in the Civil War that I read about in my school history books. As an adult, I wondered about him and his long life. Did he read a newspaper that reported the hanging of 38 Dakota in Mankato? Where was he when General Custer met Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull? Was he in Minnesota when the Anishinaabe drove off the Fort Snelling troops at Sugar Point? Was he shocked when the Lakota were slaughtered by the U.S. Army at Wounded Knee? Did he have children or grandchildren in the Spanish-American War? What did he really think of World War I and II? That old man was a veteran of war and life. I became a veteran after the Vietnam War. I served with the 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines. After our 13-month tour, we came home. We didn't get a parade. Instead, we got blamed for losing an unpopular war. We're the visible symbol of the failure of America's foreign policy. The veterans who returned their medals to the U.S. government were on the evening news. Vietnam veterans reported they'd been spit on by American citizens after the war. Life was too difficult for some who came home after the war. Veterans killed themselves at an ugly rate. Lieutenant Lewis Puller Jr., the son of Marine legend Chesty Puller, recently ended his life with a shotgun. It's been reported that more Vietnam vets have committed suicide than actually died in the war. That particular tragedy also struck my family. We buried a brother. He died from what is now called post-traumatic stress disorder. I believe those Vietnam veterans who are still alive should be looked on as examples of the strength of the human spirit. We endured and survived the whole Vietnam fiasco. Once again, my peers are dying. This time it isn't enemy gunfire that's killing them. Suicide is not taking so many anymore. What's killing them now is the painful legacy of Agent Orange. I just came back from a funeral at Fort Snelling. A relative was buried there. He left a wife and children much too early. The color guard fired their rifles and taps was played. The notes of the mournful music bounced off the rows of white tombstones. I saluted like the other veterans in the crowd of mourners. A grateful nation gave the family an American flag. When that was over, the Dakota people said goodbye to one of their warriors. This veteran had made a claim against the government because of his exposure to Agent Orange. The claim was denied and his appeal was pending until he died of lymphoma. It's a good idea to honor the veterans, but a better idea is to quit making veterans. Over half of our military is around the world placing themselves in danger. Why do we keep making veterans? Who's responsible for this? I think the President and Congress make the decisions that create veterans. The citizens are at fault because we placidly allow our young ones to be sent to dangerous places. This is true even though we have to stretch to justify using American force. That old man who was a veteran of the Civil War is gone now. I've decided I want his job. I want to ride in a parade as the last surviving veteran of the Vietnam War. I'd like to read a couple poems that are also not in the book. Once again, I think we can blame Pat. In the next edition, he tells me. They'll be included in the next edition. First one is called Shrinking Away. Survived the war, but was having trouble surviving the peace. Couldn't sleep more than 2 hours. Was scared to be without a gun. Nightmares, daymares, guilt and remorse. Wanted to stay drunk all the time. 1966, and the VA said Vietnam wasn't a war. They couldn't help, but did give me a copy of the Yellow Pages. Picked a shrink off the list, $50 an hour. I was making $125 a week. We spent 6 sessions establishing rapport. I heard about his military life, his homosexuality, his fights with his mother, and anything else he wanted to talk about. At this rate, we would have got to me in 1999. Gave up on that shrink, couldn't afford him, wasn't doing me any good. 6 weeks later, my shrink killed himself. Great. Not only guilt about the war, but new guilt about my dead shrink. If only I had a better job, I could have kept on seeing him. I thought we were making real progress. Maybe in another 6 sessions, I could have helped him. I realized then that surviving the peace was up to me. Poem about boarding school. It's called Ditched. A first grader, a federal boarding school, Pipestone, said Auneen to the first grown-up. Got an icy blue-eyed stare in return. Got a beating from a second grader for crying about the stare. Couldn't tell Ma or Dad. Both were 300 miles away. Couldn't write, didn't know how. Couldn't mail, didn't know how. Runaway, got caught. Got an icy blue stare and a beating. Got another beating from a second grader for crying about the blue-eyed beating. Institutionalized, toughed it out, survived. This poem is for Walt. We've been involved in the same struggles together for quite a few years. This is called 1854-1988. There's a Chippewa word in here, but the English translation follows right after it. Makes it easy that way. We told them not to sell, but boo-chigoo, they had to do it anyway. The bottom line is the bottom line. You sold our birthright, you pale-faced Indians, faces pale from kissing the white man's ass. The bottom line is the bottom line. Estate flashes chump change. Indigent Indians are buffaloed. Hunting, fishing, and gathering now have a dollar value. The bottom line is the bottom line. Our elders told us the money would soon be gone. They were right. It's gone. They're already looking down the trail for the next chunk of treaty cash. The bottom line is the bottom line. Money talks, whispers, threatens, and finally seduces. The bottom line is the bottom line. Anishinaabe have survived missionaries and miners, timber barons and trappers. We'll survive the bureaucrats and policymakers. Bury them sellouts deep. We know their grandchildren will want to piss on their graves. The bottom line is the bottom line. Written in the heat of battle. My son offered to take me to bingo tonight. It's so unusual for him to offer anything like that. I really have to take advantage of this. This poem is for him. He won a month's free bingo out at the Black Bear. I think he's hooked. Bingo, said my friend sitting next to me. I'm glad for her, but I wish even more it was me. The tension mounts. I need one more to make a small picture frame. He called the number next to mine. Am I using my lucky dauber? Am I sitting in my lucky seat? Oh, well, I didn't want to win right away anyway. My number comes up on the screen. A new set of worries. Did I make a mistake? How many do I have to split with? Bingo, I win. Is it true if I win once, the next win is easier now that the pressure's off? Goween. Should I play another extra game? She bought the one I was going to buy. Boy, if she wins. Not too big of a crowd tonight. The odds tilt ever so slightly in my favor. I need one more to black out. Will he call it? If he does, I'll probably black out from the shock. The buzz of the crowd tells me I was once again beat by a little old grandma. Why doesn't she stay home? I hate this game. I'm never coming back. I wonder what time they open tomorrow night. I'd like to recite a poem that was written during the Gulf War. I call it Gulf Oil. The start of the war was big news last month. It was on all the TV stations for 3 whole days. They didn't even break for commercials. After 3 days, the regular programming came back on. It started with the soap operas. I wondered about that. Then the titles of the soaps jumped out at me. All my children have but one life to live. We know they need a strong, guiding light in these days of our lives. But as the world turns, we don't want them to end up in a general hospital in Santa Barbara or anywhere else. We know they are the young and restless and bold and beautiful, but we pray they come home safe and soon. This last poem was also written during the Gulf War, called Ogitchadog. My son Matthew called me from Alaska, said he's going to the Gulf. Made perfect military sense to me. Take somebody from the snow and send them to the sand. Who knows about the logic of the U.S. military? Anyway, this is called Ogitchadog. I was born in war, WW2. Listened as the old men told stories of getting gassed in the trenches, WW1. Saw my uncles come back from Guadalcanal, North Africa, and the Battle of the Bulge. Memorized the war stories my cousins told of Korea, felt the fear in their voices. Finally, it was my turn, my brothers too. Joined the Marines in time for the Cuban Missile Crisis. Heard the crack of rifles in the rice paddies south of Da Nang. Saw my friends die there, then tasted the bitterness of the only war America ever lost. My son is now a warrior. Will I listen to his stories or cry into his open grave? Miigwech.